All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, the political world was shocked yesterday after the Supreme Court decided in a 5-4 decision that the Trump administration could not immediately end the DACA program, with Justice John Roberts, who was appointed by George W. Bush, writing for the majority. The decision sparked outrage amongst conservatives. Wasn't the Supreme Court the only reason so many voted for Trump in the first place? Why is it all these conservative judges that were supposed to back our interests aren't doing so on the major cultural cases that actually matter? It's tempting to go down that road, and I sympathize with them. But we also need to acknowledge the very basic facts here. The only reason this happened is because of rank and sheer incompetence by the Trump administration. The facts of this case are a bit confusing. The Supreme Court did not rule that DACA is legal. They only ruled that the way the administration went about ending the program itself was wrong. Literally, the only reason that this took 3.5 years to get to a point of defeat for one of the central promises of the campaign is because of rank incompetence. The administration at the time it rescinded DACA said only that they were doing so because the program was illegal and therefore couldn't continue it, when all they had to do was write a 2-page policy memo saying that the U.S. government was changing its policy. Every single lawsuit from a Hawaii judge and more would have been moot from day one. The demise of this case kills one of the only reasons that people voted for Trump in the first place, which was to dramatically change U.S. immigration law. Now look, I am not against DACA, or most of the people who voted for Trump, but I think it was an illegal program created by President Obama, and I think that if Democrats want to keep it so badly, they should be rightfully forced to give major concessions on future levels and composition of U.S. immigration to continue it in perpetuity while in Congress. Nobody has a preordained right to live in the United States of America except its own citizens. But look, none of that is going to happen now. It's 6 months to Election Day. Trump is 10 points down. Even if he properly rescinded DACA, there is little reason why doing so in the middle of a pandemic and so many of these other pressing issues that it would matter. There is no other way of describing what happened here except as buffoonery. This isn't even the first time that this has happened. Now recall, the administration tried to add a perfectly legitimate question to the census about citizenship. And instead of just saying they wanted to do so for policy reasons of the administration, they lied about why they wanted to do it while searching for a justification. Then they got caught doing that. What was the result? Well, 5-4 decision from the Supreme Court, with the majority opinion written by Justice Roberts, of course. You cannot put all the blame here on Justice Roberts for ruling against the cases that shouldn't have been at the Supreme Court in the first place. The truth is, the administration is sloppy, incompetent, and the real losers are the people who voted for Trump and entrusted him with the power and execution of their government in this particular case. Trump has responded to the DACA defeat and the most recent ruling on the expansion of the Civil Rights Act by saying he will be putting out a new list of Supreme Court justices. That is not going to solve anything. We now know 2 things. One is that apparently it is extremely difficult to find a competent lawyer to work for the Trump administration to carry out the very basic tasks of governance. And 2, even the so-called best and brightest conservative establishment lawyers don't really care about protecting their Republican base of religious conservatives and blue-collar workers. All they really care about is big business. Remember what Crystal and I always say on the show. It's the thing that everybody in Washington agrees on that should scare you to death. What many didn't notice this week is that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of an oil pipeline running through the Appalachian Trail. Gorsuch and Roberts voted exactly the way they were appointed to. The moneyed elite always wins in America. Their court decisions will never fail before the conservative establishment judges. It's only on issues of actual importance to voters that they become turncoats. So in extent, GOP voters need to become turncoats on the establishment. They cash their checks on outrage and sell us out to big business on the regular, stacking the court with people whose only goal is to destroy the administrative state, when in reality, it may be the only thing that saves us from real tyranny. Now, the moment calls for a complete rethinking of the American right and how it exercises power. And isn't it amazing, Crystal? I mean, I know you disagree on the DACA front, but this was one of the things that it's the only reason this happened is because they didn't know how to properly file a brief. That's it. Because they are so incompetent, they cannot follow the Administrative Procedures Act.
Yep.
And twice now, right, on 2 of the central things, that going all the way up to Supreme Court.
Well, you could also point to the Muslim ban, which was also just rank incompetence and also total lack of discipline from Trump. And
how many travel bans we have now? 3, 4? I don't even know.
Right. Right. And they couldn't, and again, from my perspective, I'm like, thank God for the incompetence. That's been one of the best things about the Trump administration has been their failure to basically execute on the, in my view, abhorrent things that they want to do here because they just can't get their act together. And look, I think on DACA, the legal questions may be a little bit thornier around whether they can ultimately rescind it, but not really. I mean, if the Obama administration could put it in place with an executive order,
obviously.
it seems pretty straightforward that they can probably rescind it through an executive order as well. The one on the citizenship question on the census form, though, I mean, that's cut and dry. If they just handled it properly and were able to come up with a reasonable, non-discriminatory explanation and not contradict themselves. Remember, that was part of the thing, is there were like emails out there that were like, well, this is the real thing, but let's pretend it's this other thing. And so if they could just like do the basic blocking and tackling, they could have gotten this thing, but they can't manage to do it. On the DACA issue, I do want to say, you know, one part of your radar where you talked about using DACA as like a bargaining chip for immigration restriction, I find it objectionable to use, you know, the Dreamers as a bargaining chip. That's something we very much disagree on. But in terms of this issue, look, this issue, the LGBTQ issue, these are issues that have like 80-20 or 70-30 support. These are broadly supported stances that the Supreme Court is taking. That doesn't mean it's the right stance for the Supreme Court to take. That should be based on the legal merits. I happen to think that they ruled in the right way in both of these cases. But it also lets Republican senators off the hook.
Yes.
Because they don't have to now deal with two things which are very popular with the American public, but very unpopular with their base, and puts them in a very tight spot. So while, you know, they're out there pretending to be upset about these decisions, ultimately it's good for them because they now don't have to deal with it. The court handled it, just like gay marriage, took it off the table, a hot button issue that the public was moving against them while their own base was standing firm. So they're kind of off the hook with this. On the left, I think some of the wrong lessons are being taken. One of the things that I've seen on Twitter is this really underscores how important it is that you win the presidency because of the court. I actually think it goes the other way, because while these decisions went our way, they could just as easily, with, you know, so-called liberal justices, go the other way. If you are building your political project around who's going to be on the Supreme Court, I think that is fundamentally a foolish direction to go in, because, you know, a lot of times they follow public opinion. They don't always rule the way that you want them to rule. A lot of times they protect vested interests and corporate interests. So I would not recommend anyone vote or build their political project around an institution as fickle and fragile ultimately as the Supreme Court is.
Yeah, look, this is about political power. And, you know, if it's so popular, if DACA's so popular, they can all vote on it and we can see how that goes. But that's the thing. They don't want to vote on anything, right? They don't want to do anything.
Well, and I do love how they'll all be like, even the Republicans will be like, well, of course we all support DACA. It's like, well, what? Well, you have the power. Like, just do it then. Vote on it.
That's what I mean. Fine, vote on it then.
Yeah.
But, oh, well, they're not going to do that. And Democrats too. They love the fact that Obama did this because then they don't have to touch anything on immigration reform either. The real thing here is that what you're talking about is you cannot vest everything in all your political power in the court, and you especially can't do so if the courts are made up of a bunch of people. We're an entire professional pipeline, and I want to be clear, on the right, the only professional pipeline exists to create pro-big business policy. All that other stuff, immigration, you know, religious conservatism, no, forget it. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is taking care of big business, and they want to make sure that is the only thing that will always get taken care of. Do you think that there's any corporate lobbyist out there who ever gets ruled against by any Republican justice, by any conservative justice? No.
Yeah.
Never happened. And that's actually what I really wanted to underscore here, which is that you have the dual-pronged problem, which is that the Trump administration is completely incompetent, apparently, whenever it comes to doing anything that they're supposed to do for their base. They can't even find a lawyer to file something properly. And the second one is that in the institution where everyone was like, but Gorsuch, but Trump, but the Supreme Court, those people aren't even going to come and save you. So you have the dual vested, the conservative establishment who is supposed to have your back. They don't have your back. And then you have the Trump administration who you voted for, and they're not doing anything for you. What it comes down to is you got to learn a lesson of how political power really works, which is, turns out you need some lawyers. You need some decent lawyers.
Yeah.
And you also need to make sure that the judges, look, I don't think that there's any left cultural issue where any left justice has ever gone the other way. I can't even think of one. They all know how to vote, and every single one of them is going to vote that way. It's only on the right that it's like, oh, Kennedy, King Kennedy, which way is he going to vote? Or like, oh, King Gorsuch or King Roberts, which way are they going to go? It's like the people you put on the court are supposed to have your back. They're not going to do it.
Well, and the liberal justice, like the thing that you would be worried about is them defecting to back the corporate interests,
which they do. I'm pretty sure Ginsburg does. Yeah.
on the liberal side, that's what you would be afraid of course, here. No, it was funny. I was reading this Wall Street Journal interview with Trump, and one of the things that he made this like elaborate show of, I'm signing off on all these judges. I'm signing off on all these judges. And look, the courts matter. I don't want to pretend like they don't matter. They are very important. But as I was reading this, I was like, is this still going to work for you? I don't know that this is going to work for you the way that it would have 1 week ago. And same thing with Mitch McConnell. We're going to cover more on this show, the Democratic primary and how that's shaping up for Mitch McConnell and his reelection. I'm telling you, in Kentucky, all he talks about is the courts. So this has very much undermined that whole approach to politics, which is basically said, like, you have to put up with everything else that we do because Gorsuch, because the courts, because that is the end-all, be-all. And I think that argument now rings very hollow.
And you know what it is? This is the last thing I'll say on this, which is that these Republican senators are all like, oh, Roberts, he's not ruling the right way, blah, blah. It's like, not just Roberts, man. You got to talk about what it really is. It was the administration.
Yeah.
You have to admit.
Can't let them off
if they screw up, call them out. Because how else are they going to, well, I mean, it's got 6 months left at least. So it's like, okay, well, somebody needs to call out and learn the lesson that it's not, the courts aren't always going to save you. Sometimes just being able to do your job properly is all that you need in the first place.
You have to give them some, something
That's
to
all
hold
Roberts
on
wanted.
to, some justification, and Roberts probably would have gone your way.
There you go.
Next on Rising, private equity firms are now able to get richer off your retirement funds. Congratulations to you. Friend of the show, David Sirota, is going to explain how when Rising returns.